Welcome. So nice to see you all, and so nice for people to be joining us at home on Zoom. So we are the Library Bookstall Team Leadership. This is Vicki Capus. This is Barb Ploss. And if you don't know me, I'm Shelley Butler. So we are equally delighted to have everyone here tonight. And taking weather out of the equation, April is my favorite month because why?
Poetry.
It's National Poetry Month. So I knew Barb knew because she set up the display. So it's now our delight to introduce our host for the evening. He is a well-known and well-loved man around Unity, a man of many talents and many contributions, Mr. Dutton Foster.
Thank you, Shelley. Happy Earth Day, everybody. It's good to be here. We have a big program tonight, so we're going to be short on the editorializing comments. I was assigned lead off, so I'm going to say a little bit about what I'm reading. I came across a character named Harry Washington as I was reading Jill Lepore's fabulous history of the U.S. called These Truths, a book which you have to spend some time on. It's about 800 pages, but a fabulous book. Briefly, Harry Washington was a slave for George Washington. He ran away, joined the British Army, and then had some adventures thereafter. And it just struck me that this is a story that needs to be told. It needs to be told by somebody other in a historical novel, ideally. But I had just had an invitation or been introduced to the poem form called the pantoum, which comes from the Persian, in which there are interlocking verses by a niece of mine who said, we're going to write pantoums. Why don't you write a pantoum? And coupling that with Harry Washington and coming off a long dry spell, I thought, I'm going to try to write a poem about this Black man that appeared in a few sentences in this history book. So it moves slowly because of the interlocking verses. But if you get interested in the story, you can look up Harry Washington. It's an easy name to remember on Wikipedia or online on the Britannica and learn a little more. But he deserves, I think, a good historical novel by a contemporary writer. So this is Harry and George. An enslaved worker for the rich, Harry Washington declines to stay. George has got him digging ditch. Harry Washington runs away. Harry Washington declines to stay. He joins the army of the king. Harry Washington runs away. He's heard the voice of freedom sing. He joins the army of the king. George fights for freedom for the whites. Having heard the voice of freedom sing, Harry strikes for Black folks' rights. George fights for freedom for the whites. Harry writes liberty on his sash. Harry strikes for Black folks' rights by taking action brave and brash. Harry writes liberty on his sash. He joins the Brits without a hitch. By taking action brave and brash, his reward is digging English ditch. He joins the Brits without a hitch. Dunmore puts him with the engineers. His reward is digging English ditch. He serves their cause for several years. Dunmore puts him with the engineers. Harry earns a bit of gratitude. He serves their cause for several years. He wins a Nova Scotia interlude. Harry earns a bit of gratitude. In Canada, he farms thin, rocky soil. He wins a Nova Scotia interlude. Trying to farm seems futile toil. In Canada, he farms thin, rocky soil. Winters long and dark and bitter. Trying to farm seems futile toil. Visions of Africa start to glitter. Winters long and dark and bitter for Sierra Leone. Now Harry yearns. Visions of Africa start to glitter, and thanks to England, he returns. For Sierra Leone, now Harry yearns, Africa, an ex-slave's dream. And thanks to England, he returns, but unfair taxes skim the cream. Africa, an ex-slave's dream. Harry hopes for prosperity, but unfair taxes skim the cream. Justice remains a rarity. Harry hopes for prosperity. He joins an uprising to fight, but justice remains a rarity. Troops crush the rebels with armed might. He joins an uprising to fight. His hopes are trampled on once more. Troops crush the rebels with armed might and drag them to a distant shore. His hopes are trampled on once more. The soldiers herd them draped in chains and drag them to a distant shore. Little of Harry's life remains. The soldiers herd them draped in chains. Not much else is left to say. Little of Harry's life remains, yet his tale survives today. Harry Washington did not stay. When George had got him digging ditch, Harry said, "I can be no way an enslaved worker for the rich." And thank you. Thank you. Our next presenter is Susan Hoon, who will read from a work, and I hope I said your name right, Susan, work many years in progress, but now completed, her memoir, The Widow's Guide to Becoming a Handyman. Please welcome Susan. Is this on? Yes. Next, and we'll work Susan in if she shows up. Please welcome longtime Unity member Gary Mabbitt, who will read two of his own poems, Walking My Baby Back Home and Requiem.
When I first saw that printed out, I thought, oh, it looked like one title. And I thought maybe people would be wondering what Walking My Baby Back Home Requiem was going to be like. No. Walking My Baby Back Home. It had been a summer of hard drinking mosquitoes and self-adhesive t-shirts. But kinder contact graced this night. Old street lamps watched the couple meander in shadows. She asked him to teach her how to tie a Windsor knot. He slipped off his necktie and slid it around her shoulders, reaching around her waist to take one end in each hand. You start with the wide side much longer than the other. She clasped his wrists, his arms draped over her like a shawl. The wide goes over the top, skimming across her collarless blouse. Through the loop, slow down. She leaned her ear against his temple. She could hear the surging surf. He drew the night in with one breath. Her hair smelled like honeysuckle. She turned around, wrapped her arms around his neck, pressed her wet lips to his, and standing there in the middle of the street, they invented kissing. At that very moment, the multiverse doubled. In this universe, they found themselves standing in front of a house. Oh, my roommate left the light on for me, and she ran up to the door. But you still have my tie, he protested. She turned and smiled. You'll have to come back tomorrow and get it. So this one's Requiem. Yesterday, on my advice, my good wife burned the cookies. Well, it's not like I said, why don't you burn some peanut butter cookies? No, she already had them in the oven and thought that by looking, I could tell when they were done. And in that regard, we were both wrong. I see it as a bit like being called in from the bullpen late in the game, where the logic of baseball says that even if I mess up, any batter that she put on base or in the oven doesn't count as my loss. We might say that Gabriel Fauré also bears some responsibility here, since I was rehearsing the Fauré's Requiem at that time, and I thought that a couple more minutes might be about right, but the Agnus Dei lasts 4 minutes and 54 seconds. Had I been singing the Pie Jesu, things would have worked out about right. But the Pie Jesu is a soprano solo, and I did not need to practice that. Whereas the Agnus Dei is a demanding part for tenors, made even more challenging by a jealous arranger who likes to put some of the tenor notes on the bass clef and some of the tenor notes on the treble clef, and often changing between them at a page turn. And if that were not irritating enough, he likes to put a C sharp in one measure and the very next a D flat, even though he wants me to sing the same pitch. With all that going on, how can I possibly watch the cookies?
Thank you. Up next, new to presenting at Cafe Unity, but not new to attending, Dale Howie will read Stuck on the Border of Czechoslovakia and Germany with Nothing But Time in 1987.
$1987. So, these bit of notes have been following me around since 1987, November 29th. From one shoebox to one moving box to any number of other containers traveling from one spot to the other. And I pulled them out the other day and I read them to my daughter and she goes like, "Dad, that was fire." And so then I saw this evening, I thought, well, maybe I should take a risk and share that. So I'm going to set the stage. I was in the Air Force for 6 years, and I had gotten out and spent the summer in California and got my residency, and then hightailed it back to Europe again. I got offered a job as a ski instructor in Austria, and it would have been much easier had I known how to ski. But anybody who knows me, love a challenge. So I bebopped around Germany for a little bit, trying to visit some old friends, get my ski boots in order. And so on the way, there were a few bumps in the road. And so I'm going to preface it with some of my entries to my journal, and then a bit of really bad poetry. 28th November 1987, 9:30 p.m. Way to go! I missed my train this morning, and thanks to a couple of stupid Germans, I have to pay my way back to where I just was. Since I messed up the first train there, I get to sleep in the train station overnight. I'm running out of money very fast, and I'm not in a very good mood right now. It was nice to see Andreas and some of the others, but I'm very disappointed about my boots. Promises, promises, und wieder ist ein Tag verbracht. I'm tired of sitting in this goddamn train station. Another 3 hours before I'm there. We have 3 minutes to get there from the train to the other in Salzburg that will take us back to Rosenheim. I'm mad. 3:30 a.m., 29 November 1987. Well, I'm trying to make the best of it. Instead of waiting, the other two went hitchhiking on the Autobahn, and since they're not back, they must have been successful. The way my backpack feels, I guess it weighs around 150 pounds. It's pretty cool outside, but one of the conductors let me sit in a room with drink machines. High living. I didn't feel like lugging my backpack for a couple of miles and then sitting on the Autobahn. Besides, there aren't any buses running now anyway, so I still wouldn't have made it to my final destination. I've been trying to amuse myself by writing songs or something, but that's just getting me more frustrated. I met a couple of Australians in a pub across from the train station as I was killing time. They're both on a walkabout, Australian slang for a trip with no particular limit or destination. It sounds like Australia is a nice place. I'd like to maybe visit it. I'll see how much I can earn here. Poem attempt number 1. Out of bed at 5 o'clock and the race is on. Pick out your costume, glue your face on. Just another turbocharged rat in a rat race. God, I gotta get out of this place. Now the setting is I'm nudged between drinking machines in a hallway, trying to get some sleep or anything, with a 150-pound duffel bag with my boots in the bottom. And I can't sleep, so I'm trying to amuse myself by doing something. So here we go. Bad poetry, attempt number 2. The night is cold. Lying awake, I consider what I've been told. This time, I think I've bitten off more than I can chew, but that's the challenge, that's my goal. I'm a betting man. I'm laying down all I own on me. I feel the doubt on all their faces. I feel the sting of all the rat races I have lost. I love a challenge. I know I can win, with a belief in myself and the want of revenge. For every cant I've ever heard, I'll plow it into the frost-bitten earth. 'Cause I'm a betting man and I'll show my worth. This one's for me and my fighting heart. I've no delusions on my part. There's work to be done, but I'm prepared. I'm a betting man. Nothing's to be spared. Sitting on a train on the way to nowhere, you can tell where this is from. I want to get back to where I was before the confusion. I have a destination that's hard to reach, not on the map, with no train station, and I'm not sure where the hell it is. Okay, personal humor. I'm reliving this as I'm doing this, so. Okay, here we go. Make sure I listen. Forced to live, forced to die. Whose lie are we living? Do or die. That's why we're crazy. Trying to decide which way to turn, forced to burn, stepping in time, trying new lines to void our minds of reality. Is this really me or a facsimile? Time is changing our fate at an incredible rate. The wait isn't worth waiting for. Who hid the door? I did finally make it to Schäfau, Austria, where I was a ski instructor for the 1987-88 season, and they blamed the lousy weather on the Americans that showed up, so it was amazing. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. And you're here to tell the tale. Poet John Wilson has always got some inspiring poetry for us. He's a longtime contributor to Cairns as well. So, John?
Oh, these are recent poems from this year. Larynx. The larynx has embodied the forms of the goddess, swaying naked in the midwinter breeze, ever present, unassuming, holding her glorious potential within every fiber of her being. Golds and greens of her past and future forms await so patiently the ripening of the seasons, knowing tender buds will burst with life's expression, transforming crystal snowscape into her rich, revealing dance. the deceptive solitude of her nakedness, bared for all the world to see, shines through the here and now, filled with the divine mystery. I am the child of her gentle, overwatching presence, sitting in meditation under her bare boughs. Circled by the heavy-rooted oaks, she has lofted her form heavenward, gathering all the sun and starlight that her peaceful presence requires. Don't I hear the trees chanting your mantras and praises? Ceaselessly, the ongoing uplifting gratitude travels through sunlight to leaves and deep into the rooted earth, to every living being and back again. Thus has nature circled life with love. I am the will that swims in the salmon up the chakra streams of the soul. Each form of love is the crest of a wave on the ocean of forever. Thus love sustains us on every level, and we live whole in eternity. The singing masters of my soul chant on in mantras that contain all music. Their harmonies transform the world as full moonlight filters into every cell, making my ultraviolet body glow. I do not teach you to walk my path with me, nor swim in the currents of the streams and oceans I know, for you are each unique, a marvel of light and reflection in the here now. Your love branches out on landscapes you only imagine, and your heart flows with salmon falls I've never seen. Yet it is one love working in each of us to wash away the wounds of war and flood the dams of conditioning which separate us. This body that thou hast blessed with balance and filled with holy songs of love stretches out through all your stars, saluting deities of your divine history and presence, ancestors of everything we hope to experience. Sages singing in my heart call out to all of life to maintain consciousness, to roast all the seeds of happiness in the holy fire of universal suns. This bread we share with all we meet and all who sit before our meditation seat. Come, let me feed you. Come dwell in my delight. For somehow I have found you, listening in the full moonlight. Love is like Bluetooth, connecting wirelessly those who are turned on to the subtle flow in their heart. Love is an instrument of awareness, allowing a community to share beyond space, beyond time, beyond all categories of individuality. Love is the Holy Grail. Drink deeply when it is offered. Share it freely when it is needed. Beloved, you have gathered all the beauty of this infinite cosmos, all the stars and galaxies in their ongoing round of ever-expanding birth and brightness and blackness. On every imaginable level of existence, you have created a place for consciousness to rest. Beloved, you gather and welcome me as awareness into every form of your delight. Such is your enlightenment, the blessing of being without any barriers. All of the Buddhas and poets and lovers have found you glowing in the depths of their hearts. We've had such adventures and bliss in all of thy worlds. In the midst of all wars and sorrows and losses, In the face of all oppression, your love has sustained us, birthing us into ever greater freedoms and awarenesses. Again and again, we place all thy gifts upon thy inner altar, that you might multiply them and share them with all. Again and again, we return to silence, knowing that your music of the moment creates the ground for all our dreams to blossom. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your gifts. One of Unity's many professional musicians, pianist Kathleen Bartholomew, will play us a piece from around 1700, Les Barricades Mystérieuses by Francois Couperin, and she will play The Shadow of Your Smile with a lovely jazz arrangement by George Shearing, a Londoner who was actually born blind. Thank you, Kathleen. We're so blessed with the beauty of these presentations. Up next, one of Unity's wonderful published poets, Mark Walker, whose book you can find right here in the library and bookstall. Right here in the library and bookstall. Mark will read a selection of her original work. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, these things, you kind of have to tether yourself to them. I've figured out over the years to look at the room like this instead of, so I'll try to do that. Thank you. I'm so lucky to follow music. Thank you, Kathleen. And it just, I feel like poetry is music, and that's the way I hear it and write it. So anyway, two poems from the book that Dutton mentioned, Sitting in Lawn Chairs After a Complicated Day. This first poem is called, that's the wrong one. Wait, here we go. After I left you, you mentioned that you loved me. Not, whoa, that's too close. Not the Van Morrison album we played obsessively, or the mattress on your floor, its loamy scent redolent of rain. Not the phenomenon of the Hennepin Avenue Cafe open at 3 a.m. when we needed pie, or the cricket song that night you drove me home because, overserved, I couldn't find reverse. Not the summer concert under the Parliament of Oaks, or the bud vase for my birthday, one bubble trapped in the seclusion of glass. Not the road trip through farm country, the tent, the cows, a walk along the Kickapoo in the buzzing sun. In the end, nothing made up for the lack of those three words, how their long absence took on meaning, how I'd needed them like signposts to keep me going out where the marked roads disappear. This next poem is one of several I've written about various family members in a portraiture kind of style. It's called Aunt Grace. She was a little strange, scared me sometimes. Her talk of putting a brick on my head so I'd never grow up, or squeezing me to pieces. Could she? Smothering affection, polyester bosom, ascetic shoes, small apartment for one, didn't drive, didn't cook, kitchen cupboards stuffed with books. Once, she said, God's thundering voice told her she had no right to know about sex. Was she lonely? More than the rest of us? She took me on a Greyhound bus to Des Moines so I could say I'd been somewhere. I endured it, spent money she had too little of on purses for me, trinkets, ceramic woodland animal babies. By then, I was in college. After she died, I dreamed I heard the screen door slap, and later found her wandering in the alley, a light rain falling on the hollyhocks and her upturned face. In the end, there's only this. Did I love her? Yes. Did she know it? Thank you. And a couple newer poems that kind of more or less hot off the press. And so I'm not sure they're done, but maybe. This one is called, it's after a poem that Ted Kooser wrote about his parents visiting him in his kitchen after they had died, hence the weird title. My dead parents pack the Chevy. It must be July, and we're leaving Iowa again for glamorous Wisconsin. Woods, sand dunes, the big lake stretching past every known horizon, like the book tucked under my arm. Wedged tight in the roof rack, 6 sleeping bags, the Coleman stove, lantern, card table, army cots, smelly green canvas tent. Mom's in the kitchen, packing dented saucepans and sandwiches for a roadside picnic. dad sweats over the trunk, ramming in duffel bags, beach towels, boxes of food. I want to holler, "Don't forget the cooler," but I'm too late. Now mom shows up with the webbed lawn chairs, chirping, "They fold down into nothingness." It's the same every year. I want to cheer him. "Hey, Dad, we have SUVs now, seat belts, air conditioning. I don't get car sick anymore." And this one I wrote after considering Michelangelo's famous painting, The Creation of Adam, which you can picture the burly God reaching out to touch him and Adam kind of reaching his finger and the fingers don't meet. So it's called Just to Be Alive. The finger of Adam does not reach that of God, a gap that has unsettled us for centuries, impatient as we are for resolution. But Adam, newly made, lingers in the gap. No rush. It's as if he already knows some intervals of stillness are their own destination. Like the pause taken at dusk to bear witness to the tinder of sky catching flame, or the moment before a first kiss that suspends two lovers in the bliss of possibility. No wonder Adam seems to lounge while God makes all the effort. There's trouble enough ahead, and so much promise in the here and now when nothing is known for certain except the shock of pleasure just to be alive. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Marg. Oh. For the final presentation of the first half, veteran Cafe Unity presenter, who we always love to hear from, is Lenny Seams, wherever you are. Reading her piece published in the latest issue of Cairns, quote, "All the Way, Celebrating During a Pandemic," unquote, which will be followed by Allure, written by Bill E. Webb and read by Karen Herring. Lenny?
I am so happy to be here and so thankful that all of you are there, and I have extreme gratitude for Karen Herring for letting her voice be Billy's voice tonight. I feel like the piece that I've written and the piece Billy wrote are bookends of our relationship. All the Way, Celebrating During a Pandemic. May 7th, 2020. The 50th anniversary of when Billy and I met and began our life together. The traditional theme for a 50th anniversary is gold. I knew in my heart we needed to celebrate in a big way. The planning began that year in January. First, the venue. I called Unity Church to book the parish hall. Next, music. I called Billy's former bandmates to make sure that they would save the date. Then a myriad of details were addressed. A caterer chosen, guest list created, and invitations sent. Our girls and I shopped, and each of us bought a gold dress for the occasion. Every person I spoke with was willing to bend over backwards to help the cause. Then, by mid-March, the COVID-19 pandemic shut down most everything. No one thought to be too concerned. All would be well by May. The party date, however, became impossible to keep. We were all still in lockdown isolation. We postponed until late summer, but that new date was postponed as well. Finally, with no end of the pandemic in sight, Unity Church suggested that we not reschedule until there was a clear sense of when the church would reopen. Though when it did, we would be given top priority. There was no wiggle room and no alternative action to take. We would not be celebrating our 50th as planned, and since Billy was living in a long-term care facility, quite possibly not even with each other. 8 years after being diagnosed with Parkinson's, Billy needed more care that I could give him at home and moved into Episcopal Church home. Determined to let Billy know of my ongoing love for him and to honor this big milestone for us anyway, I put all my energy into a new plan. Our day would be made special in every way possible. With a new timeline and a to-do list, I barely slept, worried about not getting everything done in time. I wisely made an anniversary card for Billy and thank you cards for the staff the night before. On May 7th, I organized my errands so that I would have everything in place at Billy's long-term care in time for his lunch. 1, cookies. I picked up 4 dozen cookies that I had ordered from our local bakery. Ginger, which is Billy's favorite, and chocolate chip. These I would pass out to all the staff working day, evening, and night shifts, the other elders on his floor, the people at the front desk, the administration folks, and our family. The bakery gave me several smaller cookie bags to ease separating the correct number for each destination. 2, flowers. The phone directions for picking up the huge bouquet of yellow flowers that I had ordered for Billy's dining room table said to come to the back of the floral shop. I arrived for my scheduled pickup and I waited for an uncomfortable amount of time. Finally, I called to find out if everything was okay. They had been waiting for me out front, where there's a big sign that says, pickup area. 3, lunch. It was imperative to me that Billy and I have the identical lunch. Both of us grew up watching Lunch with Casey, a local kids' TV show in the 50s and 60s featuring railroad conductor Casey Jones. We had loved the experience of eating the same lunch he was having. After errands, I went home to deal with how the world operated during COVID. At the long-term care, no one was allowed in the building. Each item to be delivered to Billy's long-term care had to be put in its own paper bag with every detail marked and labeled, where it was going, who it was going to, and who it was from. I was required to put on gloves and count out the number of cookies that went to each area and put them in the separate cookie bag. I sorted out which cards went into which bags. I put his lunch in a separate bag. I used a special vase for the floral bouquet and found a box to keep it safe in transport. I made the deadline for his lunch. It took several trips from my car. I had to leave everything on a table in the foyer to be delivered by staff when they were available. It took an incredible amount of faith and trust in the staff on my part to leave these precious items and walk away. The next challenge was to find a way to communicate with him in person. I asked the social worker to bring him to his window on the 4th floor while I would be in the parking lot so we could see each other, but she was in care conferences and couldn't. I asked the activities director and her assistant, but they were leading groups. I asked the nurse manager. She was not available. Yet one of these women heard the plea in my voice, had compassion, and found a random person to be Billy's helper. To this day, I don't know either who it was that found help or who the help turned out to be. At long last, Billy was wheeled to his window, the tall, oversized kind that only opens 4 inches at the bottom for safety reasons. I waved up to him and I shouted, "Happy anniversary!" His helper bent down to get her mouth by the low opening and shouted back to me, "He says happy anniversary to you too." I held up to him, "I love you!" The helper yelled back, "He loves you too." By then, I was laughing and crying, seeing this scene as it must look to an observer, like in a movie. I turned around and I hugged myself. With both my hands on my back caressing me, there was nothing more to say or do. I walked to my car and went home. Throughout that day, I was touched by the thoughtfulness, kindness, and generosity of our friends. Waiting for me on our back porch was a lovely card, a bouquet of homegrown flowers and chocolates. Later, I answered the doorbell to dear friends, bringing a lovely bouquet of flowers and a homemade card. Once again, the doorbell rang, and more good buddies stood there with more flowers, a card, and expressions on their faces that brought me to tears. I received phone calls and cards in the mail as well. How could this be happening? So much goodness. Our daughter Willie wanted to be part of celebrating with me. There was no question that I wanted and needed to be with her. She brought dinner and dessert, and we bundled up and sat on the back patio, another COVID determiner. Through tears and laughter and amazement, it felt so good to share my day. Before it got dark, a car came down the alley and stopped in our driveway. Two dear friends came through our gate, each carrying a big black case. The woman opened up her case and brought out chilled champagne and 4 glasses. We toasted to 50 years, to what love looks like, and to friendship. Then the man opened up his guitar case and asked permission to sing his chosen song for the evening, All the Way. And would I care to join him by whistling part of the song? Everything in me said yes. And at that moment, the power of the music felt big enough to carry all that would pour out of me in response to life's unfolding mystery. I did not want this day to end. The disappointment of no big gold party and the dread of being without Billy at my side to celebrate was lifted from my heart. I shared with Willie my utter astonishment and how the day evolved. She said, "I'm a bit like you, Mama. I like recognition. I told your friends that if they found it in their hearts to reach out to you in some way today, to please do so. And look what happened." "50 years ago, Billy and I found the person who could balance us. To fall in love was to be caught, to be saved," as Kate Morton wrote. I called Billy the day after our 50th and said, "Happy one day after our anniversary." And he replied, "It feels like a lot of planets have gone by." Thank you.
So I am really honored to be reading Billy's words tonight. Thank you, Lenny, for asking me to do this. Thank you, Billy, for your words, for your friendship. Billy and I met at United Theological Seminary, where he was a year ahead of me. And the year before I started there, he wrote this essay that appeared in Cairns this year, and it was in response to a writing prompt. He was asked to write something from his life that had to do with understanding allurement. And what I love about this piece is that it's a tribute to Lenny, to your love, to his love of you, and that day you caught his eye when he was painting the houses around Northwestern Hospital, and you were living in one of them and walking to work each day, and there he was up on his ladder looking at her red hair shining in the sun. And so he wrote this in seminary. And one of the things I loved about meeting him in seminary is that he had this beautiful way of connecting his love of the world and those of us sharing it with his love of God, which is what this piece does. And I love the way it does that, and it also talks about how love moves from past to future and back again. And so in this piece, I ask us all who know Lenny and Billy to marvel at the way love travels. Past, present, future, back again, and it grows as it does. And we who have been in the circle of love cast by these two get to appreciate its glow, which is a holy thing. Allure by Billy Webb. My beloved has caught my eye once again, calling me back to another time and place in our lives. Her image raises my brow as she walks forever, silhouetted against the gray matter in my head. Her picture is tucked safely away in a warm woolen sock, the one that holds the most delicate and savored memories. Still bearing the impressions set by my heart so many years ago, in an early morning ritual, she leaves for work. Going across the yard, unaware, she shines like a beacon. Her movements energize the surrounding air, and the morning begins to dance with the sun. I am behind her, strung on a ladder, peering through the steps, hoping she knows that I am looking for her throughout the day. This memory answers a prayer that seeks rejuvenation, a remembrance and witness to love's reaching act. It floods my heart, and I succumb to the rushing waters that deepen my sense of the holy, filling spaces that become revived through this touch of her presence. After so many years of growth and change, ours is a tangled mess of life's feelings, fussing, fighting, and freedom. We are who we are, stretching and pulling and still shining together, much like the soul as it travels about in life's bends and turns, reflecting the light of God. I wish to challenge myself and avoid complacency. I struggle to understand this driving moment, the one that keeps me trying to be the one with my beloved. At times the light grows dim, and I become afraid, knowing that life offers up many twists and turns and opportunities. Some are required tests with answers that clearly should not be pursued. The impulse to change away from the light is often short-lived. There are and will continue to be moments that affect us both individually and as a couple. Sharing those times helps to shift the load once again as we hike along, sometimes dry with thirst for other things or drenched with the awareness of life's abundant gifts. When I am reacquainted with an instance of my own life's light and love, I then consider that truth indeed means one needs faith. And faith is often expressed through knowing that more love remains to be found in the days ahead, especially when the faith has been sustained by drawing from the well of the past. The light that shone in the yard so many years ago still lights the path that I am on today. When I stop to rethink certain moments in my heart's journey, I surprise myself with those memories drawn from the sock. The jagged, coarse stone that years ago started out to be caressed by the loving waters and sun has become smooth over time. Does the prospect of becoming a speck of sand frighten me? What am I in this evolution? Can I see where I am in this journey? Am I the driftwood wanderer who floats along? Or am I the stone that stays put year after year? My growing ability to perceive the movement of the stone has me wondering.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Lenny, so much. 15-minute intermission. Help yourselves if whatever's left. We'll be back. Cafe Unity is always free. We consider this a gift to the congregation for all the support we receive throughout the year. Proceeds from your purchases at the bookstall continue to make it possible for us to buy books for the library, publish cairns, support the annual congregation book read, and the Anti-Racism Literacy Partners Program. Keep the bookstall operating and, of course, offer Cafe Unity each year since 2009. Thank you for this support. But sometimes people insist, so we would like to direct any donations tonight to Sucho's, S-U-C-H-O, the Saving Ukrainian Cultural and Heritage Online Project. One of the lesser-known Russian aggressions against Ukraine has been the hacking of Ukrainian government and cultural websites and the loss of online data from the bombing of libraries, government offices, museums, and cultural centers. Information is an important tool in combating aggression, but also preserving a culture's identity and history. Sucho is an effort to prevent the Ukraine from being erased entirely. More information by the basket at the serving counter. A few more thank yous. Thank you to Barbara Hubbard tonight for stewarding our team in innumerable ways. And to the Unity staff and facilities team for all they do to support us. Thank you. Thank you to Heidi Berkholz for tech support tonight. Last but not least, thank you to the faithful library bookstall team members, some of whom have donated their time and talents for 15 years or more. Finally, two upcoming events. We hope you'll join us next Wednesday, April 27th at Wellspring Wednesday for Reverend Jen Crow's reading from her new book, Take What You Need, Life Lessons After Losing Everything. And save the date, coming up on the Friday evening of June 17th, 2022 will be the book launch of Karen Herring's new book, Trusting Change, Finding Our Way Through Personal and Global Transformation. Yeah. Now back to the program. We're always happy to welcome a new presenter to Cafe Unity. Paul England will read Letter to My Editor and Attached Poem. Please welcome Paul.
Letter to my editor and attached poem. Dear Shelley, I hope you are well. As for me, I believe I'm falling in love, and it occurred to me the other day that I might leverage this situation as a muse to further hone my craft. The attached poem is the fruit of these recent explorations. But alas, Shelley, self-doubt has seized upon me as an easy target, and the notion that this chronicle of my love angst may amount to little more than vapid, self-indulgent claptrap. This fills me with dread. So it falls to you, my esteemed editor, to set me straight in this matter, and I place myself entirely in your hands. I shall, of course, as always, insist that you be brutally honest, putting out of your mind my abject vulnerability, while at the same time maintaining a gentle and generally complimentary tone. It is, after all, what you're paid to do, at least by your paying clients, I would guess. Sincerely, Paul. Desire. I was lying, and you probably knew it, when I told you that I had no expectations. When I insisted in all caps that I was open to whatever, which I suppose if you go by my head might not technically be a lie, but if you go by my heart, sure as shit, it's a lie, because in my heart, I'm sleeping in your bed. The two of us, a hodgepodge of arms and legs, and in my heart, I'm spending pleasant summer days and select weekends throughout the year in the bosom of nature at your cabin in Ely. And I've further determined that your grandchildren will, in time, come to like me almost as much as they like you. Perhaps occasionally just a wee bit more. Then, and I see this so clearly, after dinner, I'm sipping aromatic hot beverages from a unique hand-thrown mug while you play the Yamaha. Now, my head struggles to play whatever while my heart is singing Desire.
Thank you, Paul. We Cairns editors are quite happy that Kathy Oakley is joining us tonight to read her recently published piece, Tales from My Uncareer.
Getting old. Well, let's see if I can get the right relation to this. You can hear me? This is indeed from an article that I'm going to read to you tonight from the most recent issue of Cairns. And given time and whatnot, I'm only going to read you 2 of the 3 wonderful stories that are part of this article. So, a little commercial here. If you'd like to hear the other story, you get over to that bookstall on Sunday morning and get your copy of Cairns if you don't have it yet. Okay? All right. I'm trying here. Let's see if I can still see what I'm reading. Okay. Tales from My Uncareer. Like that? Okay? Okay, there we go. Do you remember the first jobs you had as a teenager? The ones that showed you what you definitely didn't want to be when you grew up? I've spent 35 years in adult education and career guidance, helping people discover their unique callings. I've come to think of those first teen jobs as our uncareer, the jobs that introduce us to the work world and teach us a lot, especially about what interests us, what we value, and where our talents do or don't lie. I'd like to share two illustrative stories from my uncareer. The first one is called Sister Edna's Teeth. My first post-babysitting job as a teen was bequeathed to me by a friend who was moving on to something bigger and better. I was hired at 15 to assist a one-chair dentist working out of a seedy little office above a drugstore. Poor Dr. McTooth had recently returned from treatment for alcoholism and the restoration of his license to practice. Although his inner office smelled strongly of chain smoking and despair, he was a kindly enough fellow. Over a few weeks, he taught me the rudiments of dental assisting, including handing him picks, probes, and mirrors, developing x-rays in a tiny little dark closet, mixing silver fillings, and autoclaving instruments at the end of the day. Things went along well enough for a while. I liked wearing my cute white uniform and feeling like a real medical professional at the ripe and untrained age of 15. As time went on, though, I became a little concerned about the help I was providing without much background. This came to a head the day one of my 6th grade teachers from the nearby Catholic school showed up with a companion nun to have some of her teeth extracted. Sister Edna was stoic. Well, Dr. M lowered her back into the chair, clipped on the white napkin, and administered several shots of Novocaine. He then proceeded to yank out 8 of her teeth, top teeth, one after the other. She groaned in pain as the extractions mounted, and her mouth absolutely filled with blood. Dr. M called for more and more cotton dental rolls, which I breathlessly kept handing him as fast as I could. He finally got the bleeding stopped. Poor Sister Edna struggled to her feet, cheeks bulging with cotton, and staggered out of the office, luckily assisted by her companion. I wondered, in my naive teenage way, whether we had done right by her. I'd like to say such ethical concerns led to my resignation, but self-interest was what eventually prevailed. Dr. McTooth had only a light grasp of the clerical work needed to support a practice. I tried to help with that, but I couldn't issue my own paychecks. Every 2 weeks, I had to remind him it was payday. With a deep sigh, he'd pull out his checkbook, ask me how many hours I'd work, and write me a check, sometimes not for the full amount. I decided my days of amateur dental assisting must come to an end. But I had learned entry-level dental assisting and clerical skills, how to speak up when I hadn't been paid fairly, and that cotton will absorb almost any amount of unchecked bleeding. The next story is called Popcorn Girl. The same friend who had directed me toward Dr. McTooth's office was now leaving for the next job that she'd found, which was the next job she'd found, staffing the one-person concession stand at a small movie theater in Minneapolis. She told me about the opening, so I applied and was excited to be called for an interview. I was offered the job for the summer. From 5 p.m. to midnight, I presided over the little concession alcove, keeping the candy counter in front of me stocked and making very good popcorn in the automated popper to my left. A stainless steel butter machine on the counter dispensed real butter, warm and melted for the popcorn. A door on the right led to a small supply room, a refrigerator where the butter was stored, and a door out to the lobby. The job was fairly easy and pleasant. It was fun to see the movie customers come and go and to fill their simple orders at the counter. The manager, Tim, a rather slick fellow in his 30s, didn't come around much, although he was a source of moral indignation to my young Catholic self. One of the ushers shared that married Tim, the father of 2, had a girlfriend on the side that he brought to the theater sometimes, which he did. I'd been there for most of the summer when 2 incidents, both involving Tim, made me decide I'd better look for another job. One evening, he entered the tiny concession space from the supply room door and stood behind me while I waited on customers. There were just inches between us. I was wearing a sleeveless summer dress with very modest V's in the front and the back. To my shock, he began to repeatedly run his finger from my back to my hairline to my waist. He did it in such a way that the customers couldn't see it, but I definitely could feel it. Today, if anyone tried that maneuver on me, he'd experience a quick elbow to the gut or a bone-crunching step on the foot, but I was too young and scared to respond. I think I may have only said, "Hey," he left. It didn't happen again, but then came the butter incident about a week later. Each day when I arrived, one of my first duties was to take the stainless steel bowl of hardened popcorn butter out of the refrigerator and put it in the butter machine to melt and warm. This day, however, I made the horrible discovery that scores of tiny red ants had somehow invaded the fridge and were now busy crawling through the butter. My automatic response was to start scraping the ant-infested butter into the trash. But no. Manager Tim popped through the supply room door just as I was getting started. "What are you doing?" "Scraping out the butter bowl. It's full of ants." "No, no, no," he exclaimed. We do this." He took the bowl from me, found a paring knife, and began picking the ants out of the butter and throwing them in the trash. When he'd eliminated most of them, he handed the bowl back to me and told me to insert it in the butter machine. "Butter is expensive. We don't throw out a big bowl of it like that." He stomped out. A few days later, I handed in my resignation. But I had learned, beginning customer service skills, that unlike my dad and brothers, some men could be real jerks, and you should always check out the butter sanitation arrangements when you go to a movie theater. By way of an epilogue, I had a few more uncareer jobs, gift wrapping at an upscale California department store, several years as a nursing assistant, before I found my eventual vocation in teaching, counseling, and management. I don't regret my uncareer jobs, though. They gave me windows into the worlds where my future students and counseling clients might thrive, and they made me grateful for the variety of talents we humans possess. And they certainly provide me with plenty of laughs every time I remember them.
Thank you, Kathy. And if that doesn't get you to pick up the latest issue of Cairns, we're equally thrilled that the marvelous Cynthia Orange will read Tabula Rasa and Searching for Andromeda, also published in the most recent issue. Cynthia.
Here it is. I think I'll start out with the poem Searching for Andromeda, but before I do, I just want to thank everyone who is responsible for putting out another year of a gorgeous, gorgeous literary journal. It's Journal of the Arts. It's got photographs. If you don't have one, get one. It's of such high quality, and I've worked, one other thing, I've worked with a lot of editors, and the editors of this journal are so good. They're really good. So thank you. Searching for Andromeda. We lie on a sleeping bag in an open field, looking for Andromeda. Focus on the fire over there, he says, and then raise your eyes. Find the North Star. You know the stars by name and can explain why they seem to race across the sky. I search for the smudge that is another galaxy, the thumbprint that does not belong to ours. Find the W of stars. You chart my course, and I obediently follow with my eyes. An occasional meteor escapes from space and is pulled toward Earth. Why am I so drawn to Andromeda, those distant stars that don't belong? Other stars shoot across me while I dance alone. I balance on the edge, wishing that someone would chart their course by my fire. And this piece is called Tabula Rasa. It is autumn. We tell time by shortened day, blazing leaf, browning cornstalk. The cheers of soccer fans at the athletic field down the street rise and fall, rise and fall. The sound of autumn breathing. Soon, I'll need to get a new date book
It has become an important ritual ever since the year my cousin Chris died. I shop carefully, examining each sample. I feel the texture of the pages, look at the pictures, read the text, do all that is necessary to find the perfect book to hold my days, my life. I often choose Georgia O'Keeffe engagement calendars. A page contains a week of rectangular blocks, one block for each day. Opposite the page of days is an O'Keeffe painting or quote about her or her work. In the midst of notations about her life, I chart my own. I record anniversaries, birthdays, death days. Chris died April 6th. The painting for that week is O'Keeffe's Black Hollyhock Blue Larkspur, one huge, round black hollyhock with a stark white star-shaped center overwhelms the smaller blossoms of blue larkspur. But my eyes are drawn to the white star that emerges like hope from the dark petals. While I let myself review past days, I try not to look ahead. I do not study the paintings or read the descriptions of O'Keeffe and her work until that week is over. It is my gift, my reward for having lived all the days on the page, like uncovering the picture of Hopalong Cassidy at the bottom of my childhood cereal bowl when I ate my oatmeal. My preoccupation with date books really took hold when Chris was dying. With only weeks to live, she became obsessed with getting a day timer, one of those elaborate appointment systems that comes bound in a fake leather zippered case. Cancer had spread to her brain and spine, and she spent most of her days in the hospital bed her husband Al had set up in their living room so she could still be a part of the pulse of the house. She directed the household goings-on from that bed like an ebullient conductor, waving her little porcelain bell like a baton. Chris was 45 the year she died. She was a large woman. Her straight, dark hair had fallen out from chemo, and her scalp was soft with downy new growth. Chris's mother, my Aunt Margaret, kept a constant vigil those last months, bathing her daughter every day and massaging lotion tenderly onto her body, an anointing. Then Aunt Margaret would dress Chris in bold red fleece sweats or bright flowered duster. There was nothing subtle about my cousin. She'd sit in bed, clean and neat, propped up against pillows, studying catalogs and Sunday ads, looking for the perfect date book. One weekend, when I was visiting, I heard her bells, insistent, ring, 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 ring. And Kathy, are you still here? I need to see your date book. Aunt Margaret, my cousin Kathy, and I rushed from 3 different directions to her bedside. After Chris examined her sister's book, she demanded to see all our calendars. We obliged, rustling through purses, briefcases, and pockets, handing them over like weapons at a gun bust. She liked Kathy's best and decided she needed to buy one like it immediately. It was Sunday afternoon in Boone, Iowa, and the stores would close soon. Mom, hand me my wig, please. Kathy, don't forget the handicap tag. I haven't had a chance to use it yet. We'll get to park right by the door. As Chris brightly ticked off her list of items for the shopping expedition, photo albums for each of her 4 boys, a new blue fleece outfit, and of course the date book, we moved her wheelchair to her bedside. The growth of tumors in her spine had weakened her legs, so it was difficult for her to move. While I steadied the wheelchair, Kathy helped Chris hoist herself into it. Chris wore a satisfied look when she and Kathy returned from the shopping trip. Chris was energized. Kathy was exhausted. They had driven 30 miles to Kmart for the day timer. The bound book was fat with possibility, pages for notes and pockets for lists, prescription slips, reminders, pages on which Chris could dissect her days, slice them into pieces divided by hours. She hugged it to her chest for a silent moment, looking absolutely content. Then she sprang into action, impatient to get into bed to begin work on her new day timer. Al put his arms out to give Chris a firm bear hug as she placed her arms on his shoulders so that she could raise herself out of the wheelchair. They took the few steps toward the bed in an awkward but sweet little shuffle dance. And after Al positioned Chris so she could sit comfortably with her legs dangling over the edge of the bed, we fluffed her pillows to support her back and wheeled her bedside table over. Chris tossed her wig aside, rubbed her smooth head, and pulled the table up closer. She carefully removed the book from its wrapper and studied the loose advertising and excuse me, and information pieces that came with it. She filled out a form for free inserts and asked me to find a stamp so the request could be mailed first thing Monday morning. Just across from the corner where the stamp was to go were the bold and taunting words, "Allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery." I pinched the stamp and card hard between my thumb and finger and buried the card in a pile of outgoing mail. Chris opened her new day timer like we were taught to open new textbooks in elementary school, carefully loosening the spine by gently flattening the pages. She recorded every day she remembered meetings with the funeral director, the hospice nurses' visits, her kids' birthdays, their schedules. Tabula rasa no longer. The blank slate was getting filled in. Chris looked like a Buddha sitting there, serene and focused, head bowed over her book. As she wrote, recording her days in lavender ink, I saw emerging from the empty pages life. There was movement, the blessed movement of life being lived. Time that had been paralyzed by the darkness of cancer, pain, and morphine moved haltingly, then boldly forward. Purpose, intent, and defiance flowed onto each page, into each moment, filling the spaces like breath.
Thank you. I didn't know this before tonight, but one of our own ministers, whom you've just heard from this evening, Karen Herring, in addition to serving Unity, launching a new book, and organizing her literary ministry, is writing a novel in her spare time. We're looking forward to hearing an excerpt now from Solid Like Iron.
Truth be told, I have not worked on this novel for a long, long time. I was working on this novel before I went to seminary, and I promised myself when I went to seminary that I would come back to it. So I have just pulled out the manuscript to apply for a writing residency next year when I am no longer serving as minister here. And I thought I would give you the tiniest little glimpse at this. And as I pulled the manuscript out, I thought, oh my gosh, it's more relevant than ever. So I'm very curious to see what I will learn about this as I return to it now, probably 20 years later. And it's a historical novel based on a strike at the Kohler plant in Kohler, Wisconsin, where my grandfather, Herring, was one of the strikers, a German immigrant who was a pattern maker. And he's not in the story, but this is narrated by a child who grew up in Kohler and looked back at it as someone who had become a filmmaker. It's called Solid Like Iron, and this is just the briefest prologue, so you will have to wait a long time to get the whole thing. The unbearable weight. When does a word become a stone? Is there a metamorphic moment like the freezing point of water? An instant when a word gains weight and form, when it can be hurled like a bullet with dead aim? Pickets, goons, wooden heads, scabs. In the summer of 1934, names filled the air long before the stones flew in the company town of Kohler, Wisconsin. Hard glances were cast silently over shoulders. Sharp words forged in private slipped into the cold spaces of old grudges and disagreements. Vandals, troublemakers, job thieves, strikebreakers. Names were wedged between rivals, between neighbors and siblings, husbands and wives, fathers and sons, hardening even as they were spoken. At 2,750 degrees, red-hot iron is as fluid as honey. It flows between the cope and the flask and molds easily to the shape of a bathtub or a sink. But let the iron cool down, and it is hard and inflexible as bedrock. For 75 years, I have carried this story with me. But now it has become too hard. It is far too heavy, and I have grown too old. I set it down here, thinking someone else might take it up next. Perhaps you? None of us is Atlas. This is the work of stories, isn't it? To help us shoulder together the unbearable weight of our history.
Get working on it. Next, environmentalist, a poet, and another perennial cafe unity, and Karen's favorite, Kim Chapman, will read poems in honor of Earth Day. Kim?
Is that the right spot? Happy Earth Day, everybody. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the earth. Who else is a fan of the earth? All right. So I've got 3 poems here. The first and the last are kind of aspirational. The middle one is experiential. And the aspirational ones were written when I was young, and I don't know how well they're going to wear. So you be the judge of that. I'm going to talk about a bird called a bittern in one of the poems, and it's a really cool bird. If you ever are lucky enough to see a bittern, Karen's nodding her head. It's got the great bittern has a great call. It goes something like this. Goom, good-choom, goom, good-choom, goom. It does that all night long. So if you don't like birds and don't like that sound, you're going to be driven crazy by it. But someone like me or Karen, we're okay with it, right? Yeah. And then the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the sound of a Swainson's thrush, which is the topic of my middle poem, the experiential poem. So you guys ready for this? Here we go. Is that crazy or what? So this is just like those Tibetan throat singers. They sing 2 notes at the same time, which is why it has that bizarre quality to it. Okay, so here we go. What is coming? Nothing is new, not even this. Before it became our own red will, fire lived in the eye of a tree after the smoking thunder passed. Before the house, there was a cave. Our bed, the mossy sponge of ground. And before the flight to the moon was the moon's true path and a cow. The web of talk around the globe, its image lived in birds that fly the poles and back each spring and fall, spreading a vibrant message. We took the willow bark for pain, the kick of a dolphin taught us to swim, and flight, that dream for centuries, beat skyward from swamps and cliffs. If there was Eden once, it lived for us to lose and then discover it again. The winds of our blue orb spread that idea, the arms of thousands sweep it from the air. So everybody knows that aspirin comes from willow bark, right? Okay. This next one is called Thrush in Migration. He's here again, not him exactly, the same one, but one of his kind, a thrush in movement to his northern home. Beneath the cedar trees, beside the lilac or the rose, he sings his upward swirling notes, and scent of northern spruce and fir descends to fill the yard in this, a northern outpost of our race. Around, the neighbors make the evening meal and talk in low tones. The radio on, our music playing, a television's blue light blazing, a mower in the distance tames the unruly photosynthesis of grass. And we feed the cats and think of summer coming soon. Meanwhile, in the yard, wildness falls from the sky, stays a moment, then heads for wilder places still, while I, a willing prisoner of this comfortable familiar, escape my chains an instant and am happy, wildly happy. I know all of you have had that feeling where you're just mesmerized by something happening in nature and you feel just that little sense of freedom and being alive, truly alive. That's a great feeling. All right, last one. If the future goes right. I see a boy step back from the edge, startled by a face his height in a cave of underbrush, a shine of eyes and a muzzle. Now he is curious. The forest was gone, but is here again, delicious, something to swallow him whole. It is here in his city, at the gates of his city, spreading out to valleys of green. The parts of it that were lost return. The wolf comes back, the cougar, the bear. I see a mother calling her daughter, who tosses her coils of hair to the side, a gesture of defiance, and drinks long at the stream as if breathing the sweetest air of all from a watery arm whose fingers grip the prairie on the farm's high ridge. Her father stands in his beans and oats and smells the sweat of flowers in air as hawk moths begin the dance of fragrance, night, and pollen. From inside the marsh, the bittern thumps, and the farmer thinks of dinner. He walks home and sees his yard light, a star against the city's galaxy beyond. I see you reading this long after my death, the boy and girl I wrote of long ago. I ask you, has imagination turned to dust? Did any of this dream come true?
Thank you, Kim. Lisa Burke. She's involved in more great things than any of her friends can count. But among her favorites are her French group, and her writing group. Tonight, she combines both into a piece called Speaking French. Lisa?
When I was, is that good? When I was in China, my French classmate Angela said in French, I was on Tiananmen Square and a thief was trying to steal a wallet? No, one of those things that fly. She gestured to the sky and looked up in her little Zoom box, then pulled on an imaginary string to bring the flying thing back to earth. Oh, a flying stag, the literal translation for a kite. And she obviously meant a seller, vendeur, and not a thief, voleur. A what, she asked? Flying stag, Tracy repeated in French, then added in English, a kite. Yes, that's it. A stag to steal, Angela continued in French, surf-voler. It was 3 fish who fly like this. She raised her hands again and fluttered them around each other. I wanted to sell it. We understood she had wanted to buy it. Angela went on to tell us how the seller, not a thief, used a small machine to indicate the price he wanted, pushing buttons for a number to appear on a screen. She looked at his offer, then took the machine from him and pushed buttons to indicate a lower price, then went back and forth until they had an agreement. A story about communicating when there is no common language. How's it going with your father-in-law, I asked. We knew from earlier gatherings that she and her husband were moving her 96-year-old father-in-law to assisted living and getting his house ready to sell. Your father is very good, thank you, she answered. I smiled. My father left us many years ago. Possessive adjectives can be confusing in French. Have you seen the immersive Van Gogh exposure? Someone asked. It was arousing. We had been warned by our professor, Christopher, about this. To say an exhibit was exciting meant you found someone exposing themselves to you by opening their raincoat and revealing their naked masculinity, for example, stimulating in a way we might assume it was not. Instead, we were taught to say an exposition was passionnante, but we forget. Christopher laughed, then asked, did anyone do the exercises in chapter 6 in the manual? Julie, a dedicated student in the class for over 4 years, said, no, but I'll do it for last week, clearly meaning next. She went on to tell us about a situation in her neighborhood requiring police intervention. The police were very scarf, she said, Frenchifying the English word sharp. Often it works, but not this time. When I was yellow, Almira interjected, the words for yellow and young are one vowel apart. Jaune and jeune. We've come to understand what she's trying to say when she talks about being yellow and about yellow women and yellow children. Natalie, who joined the class in January and Zooms in every week from Connecticut, found our St. Paul Community Education class on a Google search. She loves rabbits and introduced us to her own radar during a recent class. We had questions which she answered with much enthusiasm. Bunny needs an exotic doctor who is wise on the bunny, she informed us. Bunny is more social than cat, I think, but bunny are similar to cat. When I make his salad, he runs for the salad. But when I say salad and it's not the time, he doesn't come. Angela recently went to a play at the Guthrie, her first outing since the pandemic started. You have to wear a mask, she assured us, and you have to have the vaccine. Were there a lot of people? Yes, she answered, nodding vigorously. All the plates were full. Plates, seats, assiette, siège. Aline, who grew up speaking French in Montreal and is very patient with us and our mistakes, has been sewing flannel blankets to send to Ukrainian refugees in Poland, a project she learned about at Treadle Yard Goods. Do you two make the blankets? Tom asked to clarify his understanding. Oui. Angela said she made a blouse that she is embroidering with a traditional Ukrainian pattern. A Buddhist, she says a short prayer with every stitch, that no one goes hungry, that everyone feels safe. I have sizes that are yellow, she said, meaning fabric, and I am embroidering the skewers. She ran her left hand up and down her right arm to indicate sleeves, skewers. Tom, an artist who is part Ukrainian, has for years painstakingly decorated eggs using traditional methods. We to leave the eggs in a carton, he said, and they are removed. Seeing our confused faces, Tom held an imaginary carton and indicated eggs standing up in it. He explained that the eggs need to be picked up and shaken from time to time so that the contents don't stick to the insides of the shells, making them heavier on one side and causing them to fall over. India is new to the French 3 class, having graduated from Christopher's French 2 class. She also comes to our informal Sunday afternoon French conversation group on Zoom, and I'm always happy to see her. She and another 20-something classmate bring a fresh perspective to this gathering of mostly 60-some-year-olds. On a recent Sunday, India joined us from the airport in Reno, where she was on a layover, heading home after a long weekend skiing with her father. She's feisty and outspoken, and I give her so much credit for Zooming in French from a busy airport gate. Last Sunday, she was back home and having trouble finding her French words. "I'm sorry," she said in English, "I'm really hungover." "You have the mouth of wood," I said in French, remembering the expression. "Yes, the mouth of wood," she repeated, and then told us that her mother, a writer, just finished a mystery written for 60-year-old women. This made us laugh and ask what constitutes a book for that demographic, our demographic. With as much grace as her mouth of wood would allow, she tried to explain that her mother writes for her own cohort. We had some questions for India about her family. My grandfather is dead when I don't exist," India said. Adorable. I've been attending this class with Christopher for 3 years. I'm grateful for the time we were able to spend together in our classroom at Ramsey Junior High before the pandemic. But I'm even more grateful that this community has continued to come together online every Tuesday for the past 2 years and has welcomed new friends we've only ever met on the screen. Learning new things for pleasure during a crisis is a hopeful act, isn't it? We've all read about people, and are those people, who took up baking, art, and music and other growthful pursuits during the pandemic. To learn something new or to come back to something you don't do skillfully requires a degree of vulnerability and the need to silence the critic who gleefully whispers mean and degrading things into your ear. "What in the hell do you think you're doing?" he asks. "You're going to look like a goddamn fool. Everyone's going to laugh at you when you screw up, and you will." Mistakes will be made, and it takes courage to keep moving forward. My French-speaking friends are courageous and willing to put themselves in the spotlight when they struggle with an almost childlike innocence. There's a wide range of abilities. Most of us come to the course hoping to build on the little we remember from high school. English is not allowed in the class. A word slips in from time to time when there is just no other way to express a thought, but Christopher insists on circumlocution. What's the word for the situation where someone has done something bad and someone else knows about it and asks for money not to tell their secret? Chantage, blackmail. Oui, c'est ça. Yes, that's it. What's the word when a boat falls off the surface of the sea in a storm maybe and is underwater on the ground in the sand? Un naufrage, a shipwreck. Oui, c'est ça. Tonight we talked about the shows we're watching on Netflix. The class knows I love L'Agence, a reality TV show about a family of real estate agents in Paris who sell incredible multi-million euro apartments and chateaux to demanding rich people. I would never watch it if it was in English, I said. I don't like reality TV, but it happens in France. Then I realized something and I added, I lied. I like the homosexual eye. It seems the title in French is also Queer Eye. When our discussion falters for a moment due to a lack of vocabulary, when the relatively smooth conversation about yellow children, thieving vendors, embroidered skewers, and taking your plate at the Guthries stumbles due to a gaping hole in our knowledge, we find our way around it and laugh at ourselves, and it is good.
Thank you, Lisa. Merci. We've known Michael to be musically gifted for a long time now, but recently learned that he regularly performs in 3 different buildings at the Veterans Home. Following a few selections from the Orange Songbook, Michael will lead us in a traditional Cafe Unity sing-along finale. Words are printed on the back of your program. To be cautious, we advise if you brought one, wearing a mask when you sing along. Thank you. Michael?
Picks in my pick pocket.
Pickpocket. That's a good line.
You know, I could use it every month at the vet center and they still laugh. All right, let's bring this guy in. Are we on? I don't think so. This is a different switch.
There we go.
All right, that's different. All right, good. All right. Thanks for having me here. This is great. Thank you. I'm going to sing two songs. I want to start with America. Paul Simon wrote this back in 1966. He was taking a road trip with his then, at the time, girlfriend Kathy across the heartland of America. And maybe they were searching for the American dream. Let us be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I got some real estate here in my bag. So we bought a pack of cigarettes, Mrs. Wagner's pies, and walked off to look for America. Kathy, I said as we boarded a Greyhound for Pittsburgh, Michigan seems like a dream to me now. It took me 4 days to hitchhike from Saginaw. I've come to look for America. Laughing on the bus, playing games with the faces. She said the man in the gabardine suit was a spy. I said, be careful, his bow tie is really a camera. Toss me a cigarette, I think there's one in my raincoat. I'm empty and aching and I don't know why. So I look at the scenery. She read her magazines and the moon rose over an open field. Kathy, I'm lost, I said, though I knew she was sleeping. I'm empty and aching and I don't know why. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. They've all come to look for America. They've all come to look for America. Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's just such a beautiful song, such a beautiful song. So I'm going to sing Suite for 20G. James Taylor wrote this song back in 1970. And I read that he was in a hotel room, had a deadline to finish an album, and the contract was good for $20,000. He had some snippets of 3 different songs, which he then wove together into a single song, a suite, which is a series of distinct musical movements, and completed the contract and released the album, Sweet Baby James, and got paid 20G. All right. Slipping away, what can I say? Won't you stay inside me, Mother May? Hold on to me, golden day, slipping away. Sunshine on my wall to keep my mind on the things I'm saying. Footsteps in the hall to tell me I've been this way before. Nevermore let it rain, sweet Mary Jane, let it wash your love down all around me. Come inside and put it down, let it rain. I'm trying hard to find a way to let you know we can make it shine most all the time. This time round I'm searching down to where I used to go. It's been on my mind to make it shine. You can say I wanna be free. I can say someday I will be. When I catch a cold, when I let the good times roll, slide me in the face. Lord knows I feel good enough to my soul. Sure am fond of my rock and roll. When I go to sleep at night, wanna hear a slide guitar. When I feel loose and right, Tony Maroney and Peggy Sue, rockin' the morning boogie. My soul, sure am fond of my rock and roll. Good God. Thanks a lot. Come on up, man. So, thank you very much. End of the evening, I thought we could all sing Here Comes the Sun. I'll just do one little introductory thing, and then it's your turn, all right? Ready? Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter.
it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, the smile's returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Not yet. Now. Sun, sun, sun. Here comes. Sun, sun, sun. Here it comes. Sun, sun, sun. Here it comes. Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Got it right that time. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it Here you go. Well done, well done.
Thank you, Michael. That wraps the evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all at home for watching and listening. And see you next time.